Okay.
Live streamed.
Oh. Live from the Plutopia verse. This is the Plutopia News Network Happy-ish Hour, and we're exploring our varying takes on gratitude tonight. We're joined by the magnificent corporate mystic. You can see her right up there. I'm Scoop Sweeney, the only human to ever fail the Turing test and be rejected by technology. And our guru du jour, John Lebkowski, joins us. Ooh, in 3D. He's in 3D.
We're in 3D for him.
It's a very strange view I'm having.
What do you say?
Dog.
What do you say?
So the hard thing is doing the things I need to. It's hard to do the things I need to do here while I'm
multitasking in the
while you're
multiverse.
3D. Well.
That's a great look for you. And the corporate mystic. I like your branding now, Ms. Corp. How do I address you? Ms. Mystic, Ms. Corporate, Ms.
I've had people call me Misty. I've been referred to as the purple lady. But I'm comfortable with corporate mystic.
Call me whatever you want, but just don't call me late for dinner. That's
it's honestly, because of my purple hair, some people don't like that. And I've gotten some they've been my most interesting. I've been called Purple Karen, and I also got referred to as
Purple
Ursula.
Karen.
Wait a minute. Back up to Purple Karen. That demands an explanation.
Somebody didn't like what I was saying, and so they referred to me as Purple Karen, and so apparently I'm a Karen, but purple.
That's just nasty.
I thought it was mean. Sometimes people are mean on social media. They really are, but that doesn't mean that I don't have gratitude for the abundance of, being able to reach out and speak to so many people. So I think it's
you have gratitude for the latitude you give people.
It's okay. Extent. Everybody doesn't have to like me. I'm okay with that. I don't like everybody.
That's good. That's good, because there's some everybody's out there that do not deserve to be liked.
That's exactly. It's like, I'm okay with it. It's okay.
We won't say his name, but there's one out there, an orange-colored personality.
Oh my God, it's like the opposite of purple.
Are you not thankful for him? You should be thankful for everybody.
I have gratitude for all of life's lessons, even ones that I sometimes question or am challenged by. So yes, I actually do feel that way.
You're the corporate mystic. That person I was talking about, he would be the corporate misogynist, I think.
I think that's a fair statement. I think that and more. I think that's a fair statement, though.
But I'm just grateful he's not here. So
he should grab that handle on IG. So what about you, John?
Well,
what are you grateful for? What are your thoughts
I had that
on gratitude?
quote on there. It says, we can either be lost in a smaller state of consciousness, what in Buddhist psychology is called body of fear, which brings suffering to us and to others, or we can bring the quality of love and appreciation, which I would call gratitude, to life. With it comes a kind of trust. And that was from Jack Kornfield. And
that's a beautiful quote.
There's a Buddhist story that I thought about in thinking about gratitude, because Susie, who isn't here with us now yet anyway, hopefully she'll show up. But Susie was saying today that she has trouble finding things to be thankful for. And I sent her this Zen parable that goes like this. It says, there was once a man who was being chased by a ferocious tiger across a field. At the edge of the field, there was a cliff. In order to escape the jaws of the tiger, the man caught hold of a vine and swung himself over the edge of the cliff. Dangling down, he saw to his dismay there were more tigers on the ground below him. And furthermore, 2 little mice were gnawing on the vine to which he clung. He knew that at any moment he would fall to certain death. That's when he noticed a wild strawberry growing on the cliff wall. Clutching the vine with one hand, he plucked the strawberry with the other and put it in his mouth. He never before realized how sweet a strawberry could taste.
Very good.
Love that.
I
There
bet
you are.
I bet he invented that post-fall quote, well, so far so good,
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
until you hit the bottom.
You know,
Yeah.
I posted a word the other day on Facebook that I've reposted several times. It's apocalyptimist. And, you know, it's someone who believes that everything's going to shut, but they still think it's all going to turn out okay. And it really kind of fits the way that I live my life every day. Like, it's like there are a lot of things happening out there that are terrible, and I can grieve or acknowledge those things, but I have daily gratitude every single day for many things, great and small. Like it's something for me that I think is just an important part of being able to show up and be present. Like just to be present each day and have that kind of gratitude. Just I don't know, just a habit.
Well, that's
Well,
a great.
we all have an option to arrange the insides of our heads any way we wish, right?
Mhm.
And to choose negativity persistently, to me, seems pointless. And you might as well try to, you know, have a. I mean, it's hard to be optimistic right now. It's hard to have a positive outlook entirely. But you can always remind yourself of the things that are going right and of the things that are you know, blessings in your life. I mean, for instance, I'm not the healthiest person alive, but my health is pretty good for an old guy like me, and I really appreciate that because I'm aware of so many people whose health is not so great, you know, and of so many issues that people have that you could potentially have. And I consider myself lucky in that regard. And I know that there are people who are kind of in the same boat, and rather than appreciating their good health, they worry and complain about what issues they may be having, you know, aches and pains and so forth. But that's not, to me, the healthy way to be. To me, the healthy way to be is to focus on what's working.
Yeah, I have to agree with you on that. But yeah, I start off every day just glad that I have another day because I've had all sorts of, challenges over these few years that I've lived, a few years, 77 years that I've lived. And I'm just surprised that I survived. I mean, I have a thing that I do, and that's called whatever shows up, I'll take part in it. Yeah, whether it's good, bad, or evil, or not evil, and I've paid the price for it sometimes. But it's just nice to be able to say, "Well, I made it through another one. Let's see what this one's going to be like." And if you can do that, then you can survive quite a long time. It's worked for me anyway. But my wife has a similar attitude, and she's survived a lot. I mean, going through, breast cancer, multiple sclerosis, degenerative disc disease, and finally an amputation. I mean, someone, if that happened to me, I don't know if I'd have survived. But we laugh and we have a good old time. It's like, well, that's a good attitude to have. You have that happen to you, and you can still laugh and enjoy your life. That's a good approach.
Yeah, I have a really trauma-informed life, and by that, it just simply means I've experienced a lot of trauma. and a lot of intense, diverse trauma. And for me, you know, I've spent a lot of my life working on some of these traumas. I was born with childhood medical issues, so I had like multiple, so I've had over 25 surgeries in my life. And I've been in three tornadoes, and I lost my home to a flood, and I've been abducted 3 times and sexually assaulted multiple. You know, I've just had traumas that were experiences that informed me in my life. And with every experience that I have, it's like I have a choice of how I guess, allow that experience to define me. And there was a time in my life when I would be very defined by all these experiences. But over time, I just became, as I learned to kind of work with and understand and, you know, really process the experiences. One, it helped me have more empathy for other people's trauma and experiences. Like when I see other disasters happening, whether it's floods or fires or whatever, I have just this instant awareness of like, you know, we're seeing all this stuff on the news, but then the news is going to go away, and those people are going to be experiencing this for months, if not years, because that's how long it takes to get over those type of, if you get over them at all. And so the gratitude that I have is like, wow, I still have a home, and I still, you know, I have my health too, you know, and I have a loving and supportive husband. And even though, you know, marriage is sometimes really difficult, and sometimes, you know, that creates challenges, but we work through that, and then that gives me even more gratitude. And so it's like I find sometimes the adversity that some people really focus on as, you know, the external challenge. For me, at least, you know, sometimes I guess in the moment the adversity is overwhelming, but once I am able to work through it and kind of get to the other side of it, I always look at it like I'm just super grateful that I had the experiences. And you know, I never wish death on people, because I'm like, I'm never sure if that's like a good or bad thing. So I always wish accountability. I'm always like, you know, like I'm like, I never sort of like have that sort of karmatic element thing. And part of that is like from those experiences. It's like, I don't necessarily think all of my bad experiences are really necessarily bad. It's just how they get judged by different people.
I like your take on accountability. That's a great combination, blessing and curse. And it's the old, you know, mine is the old blessing and curse of may you live in interesting times, and I've experienced that, and I appreciate that, and I challenge those, and I mean challenge. I cherish those interesting times because I wouldn't be me without the good, the bad, and the ugly that I've encountered along the way. You just have to take it and either learn from it or or it learns from you, I guess.
It could be worse. You could be George Santos.
Oh my God. Now that would be scary. See, that's something that scares me. I would never want to be George Santos.
Espiritu
Santos. No, that's the wrong.
Oh, I mean, the thing that I'm pretty bummed about. I'm pretty bummed about violence. The violence in the world now. Obviously, this thing that it happened in Israel and the follow up to it is terrible. And you know, we have mass shootings. Mass shootings is sort of like a fad thing. I mean, it's some people are doing it as a hobby, I guess. And, you know, people are being hurt, damaged in terrible ways. They're having terrible losses. So I don't want to seem that I'm being dismissive of that by saying that I try to focus on the positive. But I think our only hope really is to not just focus on the positive, but push for it, you know, advocate for it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the negative stuff, it's always been around in one form or another. Being around for these 77 years, I've witnessed a lot of good, bad, and ugly, and It seems that lately, though, the ugly has been uh, it's a result. I hate to say it, of the spread of social media and well, not just social media, but media in general, and it permeates us. And if we pay too much attention of it to what's going on, you could really, get. I found myself getting depressed occasionally if I watch too much news, and it overwhelms you, and you think, oh God, the whole place is going to hell. But it's it's been like that all along because I lived in the Bay Area for a long time, and I experienced all sorts of weird, earthquakes and fires and revolutions and police oppression, and
Mm-hmm.
it's just you either learn from it or you let it destroy you. And unfortunately, I've tried to just not let it destroy me. Try to learn from it and avoid it when I can.
I think it's interesting because we're seeing things like cycle sort of faster, and I do think things are ratcheting up. I always am kind of this, I don't know, phrasing that I say that like nothing breaks easy, and we're seeing a lot of systems break, but nothing breaks easy. You throw a glass against a wall and it's going to shatter and make a mess. And these systems that are really truly breaking, they are going to cause a great amount of damage. I mean, they have been causing enormous damage epically in multitudes of ways for great periods of time already. And so it's sort of, what I think we're seeing, this like clash of resolution. And to your point of like living in exciting times, it's like we are seeing a very transitional period, and the way that culture is shifting. And I do think it is in certain ways doing that. It's not sustainable, like what's happening, by the way, of war in and of itself is not a sustainable system. It only has so much capacity, and then it functionally breaks down. And so I feel like we're looking, like, whether you look at it like from the corporate space, and corporate is having all sorts of struggles, like dealing with cultural shifts, and people like wanting to like look at their values instead of corporate values, or wanting to like make decisions about where they work or how they work, or all of these types of things are coming up. Those systems are breaking down. We see our government systems being really challenged, and in the ways that they get challenged, they get broken down too. And then on a greater scale, it's happening. So I do feel like it's, nothing breaks easy, but sometimes things have to break. And we're just a witness to that. And that, being a witness to that in and of itself, it's not to diminish to say I'm going to enjoy and live my life with purpose, because I'm not going to waste one moment of this time that I'm given and diminish like somebody else. Like, if somebody else had this time, what would they be doing with it? And that is not to take, I'm not saying, it is a privilege to be in a space where I can be comfortable and have a conversation and feel safe, and not be sheltering and not knowing if my family is alive. That's a great privilege. And it's not a privilege to be wasted. That's part of how I look at that. And so that's why I choose to bring positivity into my life every day, and to try to offer that to other people as well. Because there's a responsibility in that, I think.
As the corporate mystic, have you read the cards on the future of American corporate culture? I mean, what's the prediction for that? Because it's changing dramatically. There a lot of supposedly great ideas have ended up being not so great. Things like, let's build a bunch of big office towers and put our company in there, and you're seeing people moving out of those towers and they're empty, and they're big companies are suddenly bankrupt.
What I think is really interesting, and again, corporate culture, it's so resistant, and it's such a, it's like moving the Titanic, right? To shift what the big world of corporate. There's like ecosystems of like different types of culture, but the big overarching culture is it's already changed, and then companies are simply not adapting or caught up to that. But the culture's already shifted. It's already happened. And newer companies are way more aware, I think, in a lot of ways. Because I talk to and work with a lot of startups and entrepreneurs, and their perspective, they get it. And if you read things like Forbes or Entrepreneur, Wired, anything like, and it's like every single week there are articles coming out on the cost of having toxic culture. And I think I suck with numbers, y'all, but I think it was like 30 billion over the last 5 years lost because of turnover and just toxic culture with employees, and it's related to bad management. A lot of people want to say people don't want to work anymore, but that's not my experience. My experience is people do want to work. Mm-hmm. They don't want to be devalued and disrespected and just treated like a commodity. That's what people don't want anymore. And that is a very real thing that's happening. And so, yeah, I think that companies that can figure that out, the articles that you see are all on emotional intelligence, learning soft skills, what you call it? Mark Cuban was quoted. He was on a podcast like a week or two ago, and he was quoted as saying, like, I wish the one thing that I had been taught when I was a young entrepreneur was to be nice, not to be such an asshole, basically. Like, and that culture is shifting. And with that shift comes a lot of adaptiveness. You have to adapt to the needs of what that culture looks like.
Yeah, what you're describing sounds like a Darwinian theory of business evolution. And it's just survival of the fittest and the loss of the not so fed.
It's toxic culture.
It's competition.
It is about competition.
So you can form a cooperative business, and it's a very different kind of culture. Democratic workplace, cooperative culture.
The thing about it,
I had a company that I turned into a co-op, and it was anything but toxic. I can say that.
Even in a company that is a traditional organization, what kills culture all the time is, and I say it all the time, leadership drives culture and culture drives brand. And leadership sets the value system and the structure of the culture. So if the leaders of an organization tolerate any kind of toxicity, or they're not expressing those values, they just say them, they just like, oh, we value people, but then they do nothing to express what that means to value people, then ultimately that over time, people start to just lose their faith, and it becomes like people showing up for a paycheck. And in those situations, people really don't want to work anymore. Who wants to work in that environment where nobody really cares about you, and you don't respect or trust the people that are actually supposed to be guiding you or creating the vision that you're working towards? It's like people simply want to be more connected to how they're, we talk about gratitude and time. People don't want to waste their time or be devalued. They want their time to mean something. And yeah, it has to be a little bit more than just profit. And so a profitable company that's a traditional organization that also is able to have a value activated culture where you don't just they don't just say what their values are, but you see them in action, and people are empowered to express those values. That's a very real thing that can happen. And it's something that empowers that organization to be expansive and collaborative and innovative in ways that other kind of older traditional cultures just don't allow. They shut all that down.
Yeah, I have to be grateful that John and I have been able to have our little company, and it's survived a lot longer than a lot of podcasts. A lot of my friends that had podcasts didn't follow through for very long. We have 300 plus episodes, and the corporate culture doesn't really exist. John has his way of doing things, I have my way of doing things, and we coexist. That's the secret to getting along, except the people you work with as for what they are, and make that work. And we seem to have done that so far, right, John?
What you bring up is
Well, we're
interesting.
both getting paid the same amount.
Absolutely. And I'm going to go buy me some bubble gum with the profits.
What you bring up is really interesting, though, and it's sort of how toxic cultures actually begin. Is if you think about like a startup company, and maybe you've got 2 or 3 people. You have a tech person and maybe a salesperson and maybe somebody who's product related or whatever, and they're working together, and they all know each other and they understand each other's synchronicities, and maybe they even tolerate certain things about each other because they have a connection and a friendship and a shared vision. And then let's say they get funded and now they have to hire 20 to 40 people. And that one thing that they kept tolerating from Bob, because it wasn't a big deal from the 3 of them, it becomes a very big problem when it's allowed to be spread into the cultural organization, when it's not checked as, hey, this is actually something that we tolerate amongst ourselves, but maybe this behavior really isn't necessarily like something that should apply in a group setting, should apply outside. And it's these little things, these very subtle things that happen that over time, nobody ever starts a company and says, we're going to build a toxic. Okay, wait, 5 guys have. Okay, we know that. Okay, but okay. Other than that, nobody starts a company where they're like, we're going to build a toxic culture. Like most people start businesses because they believe in what they're building and they have an ideal and they want to make money. These are baseline reasons that people start businesses, and the toxicity is something that comes not as an intention, but as a result of not really addressing the types of issues that create that. It's just something that gets pushed aside.
Yeah, these top toxic companies that we know do exist. Most of them started out as a little thing. Look at Apple Computer. It was just, Jobs and Wozniak doing their little project. And as long as they were in that kind of thing, they wanted to do cool stuff, and they got along. But all of a sudden, when fame and fortune starts to enter, suddenly, some people will take that and send the company in a different direction. And I've watched that happen many times. I actually worked for a company that did that. Started out with great, grassroots kind of company that really wanted to care for people. And as it became successful, consultants came and said, no, you're doing it all wrong. You need to get rid of these people and get these cheaper people and lay off these. When that starts happening, you see the people starting to paint the going out of business sign.
I agree with that.
Yeah, that's what our friend Corey refers to as inshitification.
Yep, that's what it is.
Yeah,
but we can be grateful.
And it's hard to scale companies, and I mentioned my company becoming a co-op. I think it would have been hard for us to scale it much larger than it was, though, as a cooperative. We could do things by consensus because we were a smaller group. There are large co-ops, though, and they do figure it out. They do figure out how to operate as a relatively democratic company and at the same time grow. I'm thinking about what's Mount Mondragon? Mondragon, which is in Spain, the largest co-op in the world, one of the largest companies in the world, I think. And they've been able to do it.
Yeah, well, one of my favorite co-ops was called the Co-op, a grocery store market based out of Berkeley, and it was a wonderful place. It was an early example of what perhaps Central Market could have been, but it was more priced for the average person in Berkeley, and it was a co-op. And you bought a membership, and companies bought memberships. And if you wanted to donate to that company, when you went in and made your purchase at co-op, they ask you for the co-op number. and you gave I always gave the number for KPFA, the Pacifica Radio listener sponsored radio station in Berkeley, because they would get credit for it on their account. And people did that sort of thing. If they weren't a member, they could still go in and shop there and benefit a local group. There were the free clinic had a number. I use the free clinic's number sometimes just to make sure that my money was being credited to something useful, and that was
co-ops by their nature
thing.
are value driven and value activated. I mean, that's and it's what drives it. So it doesn't matter who is sort of heading or guiding the co-op. If the values are structured in place, anybody can step in and continue to uphold those value systems. And or companies and corporate culture have traditionally really used values as a marketing tool, as a way to recruit or a way to just kind of pump up their brand, and haven't really had to live up to those values. Where co-ops, just by their very nature, their value supported by the people who support them. It's a cycle, in the way that the value is supported by the consumer who supports the value of the co-op who support. So it just becomes this intertwined thing. Corporations don't have that same relationship because they're bottom line profit driven. A co-op isn't necessarily looking at the bottom line profit of what they're doing. They're looking at the purpose of what they're trying to accomplish and the benefit of the overall group, the overall, or the democracy of it all.
And then it gets very silent.
And a hush fell
as we think about it.
No,
I was thinking about, I worked for a while, not a really long time, a couple of years, 2 or 3 years. I was working for Whole Foods Market, and they were in like 28 states by then, and they had acquired some other companies, and it was kind of interesting to watch how that worked. When a company acquires another company, it's like a culture is acquiring another culture too. And it was interesting to see how that cultural assimilation would happen. And it would be kind of different from each one. I mean, each one had a different culture. It's all these like natural foods stores and a big vitamin company and one thing and another. But
I think that would have been fascinating.
But Whole Foods had a culture that was, it was, obviously it's not a cooperative, but there was a sense of, I guess it was, the sense of being like a company that where the people are trying to be mutually supportive and work to each other's benefit to a greater extent than some of the companies where things are more like competitive.
It seemed like it had a community culture, at one time. I mean, that's how I thought.
Yeah, exactly.
Like it cared about its community, and bought from its community and did, like supported it and did things that were integral. And then over time that seemed to shift.
Yeah, from what I've
my gig there was to try to bring them. Oh, go ahead.
From what I've heard about, the early version of Whole Foods was, the one store. Was it downtown or in the downtown area?
It was down on Lamar, I think.
Yeah, and it was kind of a fly by the seat of your pants. Not a big corporate culture, but of course, that kind of thing can either go one of two ways. It could continue like that and be small and funky and, people centric, or you can become a big corporation. And that seems to be, what happened eventually. And now it's Amazon.
Well, what happened with Whole Foods was fairly early on, not at the very beginning, but early on, when they were still one store. And there was a terrible flood downtown. I can't remember when that was. It seems like it was 1981, but I may have that wrong. But it was a really bad flood, and the store was flooded. It really sort of ruined the store, and that could have been it for Whole Foods. And one of the reasons that Whole Foods was able to survive that was that the whole community around there, the customers, came and helped and did what they could to help, sort things out after the flood. And they managed to come back from that, and of course have grown into a larger company and was eventually acquired by Amazon. But that was something. When I went to work for them, my role was to sort of help bring the company onto the internet in a bigger way. And, they wanted to do e-commerce. But I was also an online community person. And one of the first things I did was I wrote a series of articles for the company newsletter. And one of the things I stressed was the deep roots Whole Foods had in the community where it began, and how it was always a community-centric company, like store. And as it grew, one way for it to sustain that sense of community would be to create an online community, which we actually did for a while. We had a set of forums for Whole Foods, and we did like chats and that sort of thing. And the one thing that we didn't do that I wanted to do was create a separate community space for each store and have a sort of network of local communities that were sort of networked through the overall corporation. We didn't get there with that, but I think that would have been a very interesting thing. That can be harder to do, and there's this whole idea of like right now on the internet, you have a growing rejection of the corporate hyper-capitalist approaches to platforms, where you see like Facebook, trying to very focused on making money, and everything that they do is focused on the bottom line. And people get tired of that. They don't like that. Twitter, was it was kind of ambling along, and it wasn't doing very well. And then Elon Musk bought it, and he's been trying to turn it into a money-making venture. And he, because of some of his beliefs and just the nature of things, it's become kind of a toxic culture. And what's happened now is there was already a movement to build an independent web, indie web. And one of the things that was part of that movement, or aligned with that movement anyway, was the idea of building a federated environment where you could have, instead of having a big centralized platform, you could have a bunch of platforms that would network with each other. So you could share across the network, but at the same time, you could be on an independent platform.
Kind of like Fido.
That's called the Fediverse. It's federated. Yeah, it is a lot like FidoNet.
For the BBS systems, because that was the early, interconnection that, really worked well until, of course, it was replaced by the internet came along, and BBSs went away. But that was a great thing to look to for a model for what could be saving the social media.
Isn't that sort of the basic model of Discord and platforms of that nature?
Discord's kind of like that. I mean, they're definitely a for-profit, but they're user focused, and originally it was built as a platform for like gamers like to have a platform they can use to have discussions on the side, right? So Discord became a big one for that. There was also Twitch, and the power of Discord is that they really they understand their users and they're committed to them, and they work very hard to sustain a user-centric environment. And what you have with Discord is just that. You have a bunch of different servers, and they don't really have a way for those servers to connect with each other. they're all very sort of separate and independent from each other.
Mhm.
But it is kind of like that. Mastodon, on the other hand, is set up for the servers to be able to share the posts. You can see posts from a different server, so it's sort of like a big network where you have a broader set of things that you can see than just what's on your specific server. But at the same time, you can make choices. Especially the people who operate servers can choose to like block other servers. So if you have like a server where it appears that there's a toxic culture forming, you just kind of exclude them, and they can continue to do their thing there, but not necessarily infect other parts of the network.
So if Elon
It's an
his
interesting
own
time.
server, you could exclude him, hopefully. Because I can see him just wanting to, I want to get involved in that too. That's kind of what he did to Twitter. The
Federation is a very interesting challenge. It really is. And I think about one example of federation that we have is the United States. Mm-hmm. And we are a federated system, and now we have people who want to tear that down.
Yeah, the Texas Nationalist Party, for instance.
Yeah, sure.
They just had their
we have,
convention.
They're one group.
Well, we have to decide. We have to decide whether is that what we want? Do we want to collapse that because it's been very advantageous, and we've so much good has come from it, and the idea of just tearing it down. I mean, sure, we could talk about modifications and that sort of thing, but man, I think the people who really want to tear it down don't really realize, they don't understand what they're doing. They don't understand what they're going to lose.
Absolutely.
Personally,
from that. I listened to some of the speeches that were given at the Texas Nationalist Party convention just this past week, I guess it was, and the logic or the lack thereof was just astounding. It's like, well, yeah, you're going to just drop out of the United States and become this little banana republic here in Texas. And how are you going to sustain that? Because you have to undo all those connections that Texas has to the United States. What are you going to do with the veterans hospitals? You're going to nationalize them and kick and finance all of that, because that's all done by the Veterans Administration, which is part of the U.S. government. What about Medicare? What about Medicaid? I mean,
Texas has had a great example of why that doesn't work, and that's the thing that happened. The cold,
the electric grid,
the cold front that we have. Yeah, the electric grid.
And they're still in denial about that. It's going to be fine. And we're going to do all these new things, give these companies a lot more money so they can maybe build more generation capacity, or maybe not.
We'll just get rid of clean energy and rely completely on fossil fuels.
But did you see?
Because it was the windmills that caused the problem.
Well, Ted Cruz came out and boasted about our windmills because we produce more wind-powered energy than California. We're the biggest.
Indeed.
It's like, hey, Ted, I thought you hated all those guys.
Yeah, no kidding. That's interesting.
Talk about talking out of both sides of his mouth there.
Well, when you got as many blowhards as we have, you have a lot of wind circulating.
Blowhards are us here in Texas.
There you go.
So gratitude.
Yeah.
I'm just grateful that they haven't put us in the ground yet. There's so many people who really want to do that, folks that disagree with them. So I'm just glad that we have people like us around who at least moan and groan about it, because that's one thing to be grateful for, is the fact that we can get away with this. And no one's knocked down my door yet, but hoping it stays that way.
I'm like, you're making me look around.
I have actually, I've given that some thought, that whether the day would come when the kinds of things that we say here are considered criminal.
I mentioned it earlier, and it's really, I mean, it doesn't on any personal identity level bother me, but it's not lost on me how angry my purple hair makes people. And it is kind of a political statement in our society to have purple hair. It actually means something to certain people, and it definitely.
What does it mean? What does it mean to them?
I identify as pagan. I identify as non-traditional, sort of outside of the traditional culture. I might be seen as a power, whatever. I would say powerful or authoritative. They might say bitch. There's just this. It just is identified with a certain type of woman that chooses to make that statement. And for me, it's interesting because this has nothing to do with why I have purple hair. I think of it as my natural hair color. I've had it for many, many years, long before it was ever political or anybody, ever did it for any particular reason. I've just always done that. And over time, though, it's, become sort of associated with a statement, just like other things that we didn't think were political for the longest time that all of a sudden became political, like happy holidays or whatever. It's just like one of those things that it identifies me in a particular way. And it's interesting, sort of the hostility that comes with it, because it's real hostility. It's like, it's really directed hostility.
Yeah, hair can be political. My little ponytail here gets comments on occasion. It's like it always makes me laugh because I remember back in the day when it could actually get your ass kicked. I remember walking around in Houston with my weird T-shirts on and my long ponytail and having the rednecks come up. Hey, girl, want a date? It's like, okay, yeah, whatever.
Exactly the truth. It is a political statement sometimes when you choose to do something with your identity that seems to challenge or go against what is seen as normative. And, there's all sorts of groups of people who are repressed and oppressed by things that they have no control over. So there's a privilege around making choices about your identity and doing things like that will sometimes cause people, it's a definitive statement of saying, like, I can make this choice and I can express myself freely. Some people don't like that.
Yeah, well, hair can be a cultural thing. I actually wear mine in honor of my grandmother, who's Choctaw, and I had the honor of brushing her hair when I would go and stay with her. She had hair that had never been cut. It went down to the floor. She was not a real short woman, but she wasn't real tall, but it was this gray thing. She would keep it up in a bun so it wouldn't get in the way. But at night, she would ask me if I would come in and finish the brushing because she had this beautiful brush. And so I would brush it. And I asked her, why don't you get your hair cut? And she said, my people thought that was a great sign of who we are. That's part of our culture. And, she told me all sorts of stuff. Yeah. And it was, to her, it was part of her culture. Yeah. There are plenty of short-haired Choctaw around. I mean, I met lots of them, but it was her statement of this is who I am, and I'm not going to change it just to please you.
My husband,
I enjoyed that.
My husband was from Sioux City, and his best friend Tony was Sioux. His family was Sioux and full Sioux. They were They did traditional tribal. His father was an elder. And they had never cut their hair. And when he went into high school, the high school forced him to cut his hair.
And they still have that happening here in Texas, over in the Houston area. Just ridiculous. A guy has really nice looking, dreadlocks that are, are not just flying all over the place.
It wouldn't matter if they
looks
were,
nice.
but it's such a personal assault to do that to people. And I, really, it is an attack on their identity at its core. And I've never understood just honestly how that was seen as okay. It's always upset me so much.
There are some people around that just love to
it's a form of control. It really is. And again, it goes back to that expression of identity and the threat that expression is to normative culture. And normative culture is very controllable. And this even comes back into the corporate space or into like our political spaces or anything that we're doing. It's like that threat of people expressing that individualistic aspect. But the thing is that there's a lot of power in that for the culture. If we can really appreciate and respect and assimilate those individual aspects of ourselves that are different, but valuable and awesome, but instead we tend to default towards fear. That's sort of how we're conditioned. So
yeah, I just enjoy, I've been doing a lot of research on my family, on ancestry, and found all these amazing things. It's nice just to be able to celebrate that and to have people who think that's stupid. You're just an American. It's like, don't find out where you came from. It's like at this late date in history, in human history, there are no pure blood anythings unless it's the tribe that's been uncontacted since the Stone Age. Other than that, anybody that's done the DNA, I know some people who've done the DNA test, and I didn't bother with it, but they were, a few of them I've talked to, they were appalled that they had African ancestries. And I told them, where do you think we came from? That was the so-called genesis of the human race. And if you don't have African ancestry somewhere in there, then you're probably from Mars.
I'm like my favorites are the people who show up genetically with that that genetic that isn't like anywhere, and so you're like, oh yeah, you are alien, like because they're real, like they're really real.
Well, and I welcome those aliens there. I mean,
me too. Oh no, I haven't done the genetic test, but I deeply believe that that's how I'll show up.
Yeah, I'm not going to protest if they move in next door or want to marry my daughter. She's already married, so it doesn't matter.
I just watched Arrival like 4 days ago. I don't know if either one of you have seen Arrival, but it is fantastic film. And I've only seen it once, and so this was the first time I'd seen it since. And I really, yes, I welcome the aliens.
A film about communication.
It's so beautiful.
Really.
It's such a beautiful and it's quite time and space. Like I love the quantum beauty of the time space continuum that is talked about in that film. And I don't know, there's so many things there that my brain is full of joy.
Yep. You just have to rejoice in the fact that all the great things that you experience in your life is still happening somewhere.
It's like I say, die before you die is one of my favorite, like kind of, it's how I do anything I'm afraid of. It's like, well, what's the worst thing that could happen? I could fall off the stage and like vomit on the person on the front row. Okay, I've already done it. It's done. I've died before I die. I'm walking on stage. It's great. And this is sort of how I live my life. It's just die before you die and then move on. And it's already happened. So if the worst has already happened, then everything's okay. And that's, I don't know, that gives me courage.
What I love about those embarrassing moments, and I've had more than my share probably, because I just tend to just do stuff without thinking about it. And I look back on some of them as like, that was actually pretty funny. I was an idiot, but just don't do that again. If you
well,
can,
it is
learn.
It's the point that the worst that can happen isn't going to kill you, and then if it does, well, you've already died, so what difference does it make? So it's like,
if it killed you, doesn't matter.
It gives you freedom. It's like permission for freedom. It's like, yeah, it is one of my personal favorite mottos.
So, John, do you have any things to be great? I would say to have gratitude about, as we have about 5 minutes left.
Oh, quite a bit.
Parting shots there.
Yeah, I was gonna try to look up my ancestry, but it seems like everything I try to do involves way too many authentication steps.
Oh,
you know what I mean? And I'm having a little bit of that right now, trying to get access to 23andMe, because I thought I would just breeze in there and tell everybody what my percentages are. But, interestingly, so I have that unusual Polish name, but I only have some Polish. I may be a quarter Polish. I'm more Anglo than anything else. And that surprised me. It surprised me to learn. I guess I probably should have known that. Anyway, so I'm not having much success there.
My dad did the genealogy with Brigham Young University and traced his side of the family, his side of the family lineage back to like the 12th or 13th century. And we are Scottish. My maiden name is Walker, and our clan was the Stewart of Appin's clan. And we were called walkers because we walked water wheels back in the day. We were water wheel walkers. And so we had our own crest and tartan. So I don't know. My mom's side of the family seems like exciting and exotic, but we never did all of that interesting research. But that's what I know.
If I ever install a water wheel, I'll give you a call there.
Please contact me, and please don't ask me to run, because it's literally not in my genetics.
Just walking.
Just walking.
Slow speed.
I only run if I'm being chased.
So I'm thankful every year around this time of the year for pomegranates.
They are
really nice big pomegranates.
They're in all the stores.
Yeah.
HEB had a mountain of them when I went by there.
I'm getting some tomorrow.
And they're huge, and they're very tasty.
And they're
really, my Lord.
And they're really slow to eat because
and they're so
digging
beautiful.
those little things out.
They're so pretty. No, there's magical ways to get the seeds out.
Year.
There's really magical ways to do it.
Oh, I have my own system
yes.
for that, but yeah, it's part of the challenge, right?
I'm so happy that you brought this up.
Oh yeah. Well, as I said, I have a lot to be thankful for. I've had a pretty good life, and I can promise you along the way, I did not think that was the case. There were many times that I thought that I was just being screwed, and I look back now and I said, well, that's ridiculous. I had it easy. My life was easy from day one. And it was harder than I know people who have had easier lives, but I know people who have had much harder lives. But, I was I'm a white guy, born into privilege and all that stuff. And I've had a cruise, really. And I can be thankful for that, but I also wish I could say that I could be thankful for the way other people have been able to live and the way other people have been treated. Just not the case. There's a great deal of inequality. There are people who are treated very badly in this country and others. And I don't really understand why humans treat other humans the way that they do. It's beyond me. It's just a mystery. And it's a mystery I'm trying to figure out how to address. I'm an old guy now. I don't have much time left, but I really think I could find ways to help people to just kind of let go of all the toxic bullshit and learn to be loving and gentle with each other. So that's my speech.
That works for me.
And we have.
I'm glad to be breathing.
We have actually run out of time. Can you believe it?
Well,
here we are.
Dot.
We did. Did.
Everyone, Corporate Mystic John. Geez, that was fun.
Right on. This
I'm
is great.
thankful for y'all. Woohoo!
And we won't be here. We won't be here next week because we will all be in a food coma.
Yep, it will be Turkey Day. Not Thanksgiving around my house, but we have Turkey Day.
Lasagna Day.
I am a turkey.
Just a week away.
Having lasagna day.
Good night and